Welcome to The Give, presented by Lawrence First and Goal on the Coach and Coordinator Network. Every coach is looking for the next great presser package, coverage adjustment, or schematic advantage. But what if the biggest difference in your defense isn't found on the call sheet at all? In this episode, Davidson College defensive coordinator Woody Blevins explains why great defenses are built long before kickoff. Drawing from stops across every level of college football, often at programs forced to do more with less, Coach Blevins shares how clear philosophy becomes the foundation for every decision you make as a coordinator. If you're building a defense, developing coaches, or trying to create consistency inside your program, this conversation will challenge the way you think about leadership, culture, and the purpose of defense. Let's get to a segment of Coach Woody Blevins' presentation at the 2026 Lawrence First and Goal Clinic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Woody Blevins. I'm the defensive coordinator at Davidson College. And today we are talking about building an attacking defense from the ground up. So, first things first, I want to thank you guys for coming and joining us for this session. My goal today is to help you articulate and organize your philosophy so you can actually use it. I know there's a lot of philosophy talk in this profession and in a lot of things, but I think it is absolutely the most important thing that you can have and you can rely on. We'll get into more why as we move on. But again, I want to thank you for spending your time with me because you got a lot of things to do, and I appreciate it. Now, every meeting we start at Davidson College, and every meeting I've started as a defensive coordinator, we start with something called the juice. There's actually some brain science between your amygdala and hippocampus, and the chemicals are created and how they work together, but we're not here for a brain chemistry lesson. We're here for football. But it is a great way to start your meeting so that everybody's brains are ready to go. We start with something positive, something funny, something motivating. Like Zig Ziglar always said, that motivation and showering doesn't last. That's why we recommend both daily. So it's good to start the meeting out with something fresh. Sometimes the players get up and do the juice for the day, and sometimes they just send me a TikTok they want me to share. But today's juice is a story told by Les Brown, one that we've all heard, one about the Chinese bamboo tree. And I think it parallels what we're going to talk about today. Well, the Chinese bamboo tree is a bamboo tree that grows 90 feet tall. And when you plant the Chinese bamboo tree, you plant it and you have to water it and fertilize it for 4 years before it shows above the ground. But you got to do it every day. And so after you're watering and fertilizing and watering every day, finally it shows above the ground. But in those next 4 months, it grows 90 feet tall. So the question that Les Brown asked, the great motivational speaker, he asked, so when was the tree grown? Was it the 4 years or was it the 4 weeks? And so when we're thinking about philosophy, we're going to be working on a lot of things that a lot of people don't think are seen, but really they are shown during the 10 or 11 games that we are responsible for every single season. And when we look at our philosophy, again, we won't always think that some of these things will come to light, but they always do in some small shape or form or fashion. Now, a little bit about my football journey. I was thinking about what is one thing that I want to communicate, one thing I want to help young coordinators and coaches with. And, we could talk about X's and O's, and that's great. And a lot of this is for that. And I've already watched a couple of the clinics already and got a lot out of them. But if I could go back and talk to my first-year coordinator self, my young coordinator self, then I would want to learn more about philosophy and get it ironed out earlier. But the reason that I am the way I am, and the reason I'm going to take this journey of explaining my football journey and then how that impacted my philosophy, because I want you guys to understand where I came from and why I think the way I think, and I think it's good for a healthy philosophy, and one, not big one for statistics, but I have been blessed with some great groups of people, some great coaches, and we've been able to put on some really, really great defenses since I've been a defensive coordinator. And I think a lot of that is also because we do have a strong philosophy. Now, a little bit about my football journey. I started in the PFL. I played corner at Drake University. I had 3 head coaches in my first 3 semesters. And after the 3rd semester, I figured if I was going to have a 4th head coach, then I might as well pick it. And, that was probably, Drake is a really great school in the PFL, and it consistently wins the PFL, consistently won the PFL when I played there as well. Now, I played there for 3 semesters. I transferred to a Division II school called Colorado Mesa, where we had a very, very limited budget. Not the most limited budget in the conference, but definitely the bottom half. We only traveled with 1 bus. That's right, we packed every single player into the bus. Like, the reason that we knew somebody was missing because a seat was open on the bus, and our head coach traveled on the bus with us. And if we traveled an extra guy, if we got to 55 people, then 1 person had to sit with the coach for the drive. But we had limited scholarships. Already the RMAC was not a fully funded scholarship conference when I played, and we were not fully funded within the scholarship. Our head coach, while I was there, was able to win the first play. Well, I wasn't necessarily there for this, but our head coach was able to win the first playoff game an RMAC team ever won, and he did that with a very, very limited budget. 1 bus, which absolutely seems crazy nowadays to think that a football team would travel in just 1 bus. But he did all that, and I think it was the way that he thought and the way that he attacked everything every day, and his personal philosophy is something that imprinted heavily on me. The next place that I went, I also coached at Mesa for 1 year, and unfortunately we got let go. I went to the University of Northern Colorado. I was there for 7 years. I started as a volunteer my first year. I was the GA my second year. I was a safeties coach my 3rd year. Then 3 years later, I got promoted to special teams coordinator. And I was lucky enough to spend a significant chunk of my career at University of Northern Colorado. I got to see sort of the gambit. Now, University of Northern Colorado had moved up about 10 years or 12 years previous to my arrival and our arrival as a staff. But they still have a history of being one of the worst FCS schools in the country. And let me tell you, when I was there, we definitely added to that list of worst FCS schools. But we were able to do one thing that hasn't been done before or since in the Division I era, and that was we had 2 winning seasons. And so I got to see us lose 11 straight games and lose to a Division II school. I got to see us win 6 games for 2 seasons in a row. I got to see us go back down to losing as well. And that really taught me a lot during that process of, hey, if you're a have-not of the conference, because we weren't fully funded until about midway through my time there, if I remember correctly, but we weren't fully funded. But what does it look like to be not fully funded and lose, not fully funded and win, and then fully funded and lose again, even though we were getting more money and we had more opportunity and more advantages? Now, the next place I went was the University of Hawaii, which everybody in college football and football knows that they do not have the budget that everybody has, and the amount of adversity that you face in that job is unparalleled. When it comes to travel, when it comes to funding, recruiting, everything is harder there. The one thing I will say about that place is the absolutely amazing people of Hawaii, the amazing culture that's there. But my time under Nick Rolovich at University of Hawaii taught me that, and we were able to win 10 games in that season, go to the Mountain West Championship, and win the Hawaii Bowl. We did that with all of these disadvantages, all of these adversities in our path. But we were able to find, and Coach Rolovich taught us how to find, number one, I think that's a key, is to find every advantage and use every advantage we can gain, whether that was weather, sun location, like you name it. If there's a way to find an advantage, we were finding it. We even, there was a game we won against University of Arizona, the first game of the season. We switched locker rooms so that they would be in the sun. So we were coaching in the away box, and we were able to manipulate multiple factors every game that people don't necessarily think about, maybe go under the radar as unimportant. And we were able to win games. And even things like, it seems small, but what time is the sun going to be located in the stadium, and how does that affect where the sideline is? Now, my next stop, I went from University of Hawaii across the country, 1/5 of the way across planet Earth, to Assumption University. And Assumption University was excellent under Bob Chesney, and then there was some change in leadership when I first arrived, and we had cut down scholarship money and actually changed the scholarship model soon before I arrived. And then a month after I arrived, the pandemic happened. And when that happened, we did cut our athletic aid for 2 years. So we were essentially a D3 team playing at the Division II level for my first 2 years at the school. So we had to recruit 2 classes where we weren't allowed to offer scholarships, but we were still in the Division II conference. And not only that, in that year, it was my first year as a defensive coordinator. In that time, we lost all of our senior starters, and except one. We had one as junior starter that ended up being a senior by the time we could play football again, but we were able to maintain one starter, one other player who had at least started a game in his career, and then we had one player who had played 7 plays and another player who had played 1 play. But that was the starting defense, and I had never called a play as a defense coordinator, so we just had 0 experience across the board from my first year as a coordinator. And in that time, being at a school where we didn't have scholarship money at the Division II level, playing in Division II conference, taught me even more about being a have-not in the conference, especially Assumption, who had, before Coach Chesney had been there, had been a bottom dweller in the NE10 for a very long time. Now, the next school I was at was University of West Georgia this past season, and worked for Joel Taylor, a good friend and mentor of mine. And we played our first Division I schedule, full Division I schedule, second year in Division I, and we were only one of 2 teams in our conference who had no NIL money. So again, I went to a school that's a have-not of the conference. It's a wonderful place, but again, another have-not school in the conference. So now looking at the common theme, the common thread through all these schools, really except Drake, is that we had to learn to do more with less. If we just did what everybody else did, we weren't going to be successful. And that was, again, what my time at Mesa at the very end, when we got let go, I got to see us act as if we were, we weren't a have of the conference, we were a have not, but we wanted to act like we were. And we wanted to do things the way that everybody else did. And then we got to the University of Northern Colorado. We just did things the way everybody else did, and then we lost. We were able to win, and then we were able to lose again. So I got that lesson hammered into my brain with extreme force and with lots of pain, the pain of losing. Now, one thing I want to talk about now that we're getting into, kind of why I am the way I am, why I think the way I think, is I've just never been blessed with that opportunity to be at a school where we have the most, we're even in the top half of what everybody has. So I truly believe that doing more with less is a prerequisite for building an attacking defense, because, we say we want our players to attack, our defense to attack, but really that is something that is seen in hindsight. That's a result that coaches say, man, they attack. But we have to build in such a way and think in such a way that that is the end result. The attacking feeling that we put on the field on game day is a result. So I tell the players this all the time, but great defenses are not just made from sideline to sideline. They are made from ear to ear. And the first thing that we have to do to our players, and as defensive coordinators, not only do we have to change our mentality, but we have to change their mentalities. And if we can teach them to change their mentality, then we can teach them to change their life.
This episode is brought to you by the LFG Clinic Store. LFG Clinic is now hosting everything on its own platform, giving coaches one place to access 2026 clinics, courses, bundles, and more. As you gear up for the season, Lawrence First and Goal Clinic has resources to help you sharpen every part of your program, from technique and drills to philosophy, strategy, and staff development. And as always, proceeds from the sale of these courses benefit the missions of Lawrence First and Goal. Visit the Lawrence First and Goal Clinic store today at lfgclinic.com or click the link in the show notes and get ready for the season. Now back to the episode.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
Now, why is philosophy important, right? It's we want to talk about, this blitz or this or that. But a great philosophy keeps us grounded in success and afloat in failure, okay? Now, I had 8 coordinators in my first 10 years of coaching, and I got to see that there was, I got to see coaches do things all different ways. Not a single one of them came in with something, a similar style, a similar system. Every single one of them was wildly different. And that was a blessing. Now, first of all, I got to learn a bunch of different schemes. I got to see a bunch of different philosophies and a bunch of different ways to attack. I got to see how to be successful and unsuccessful. Now, your vision as a coordinator and a coach, even if you're a position coach, I think this is wildly important. Your vision matters. Where you see and what you believe that this position group should be matters. And the best coaches have a true philosophy that gives that vision a direction. Like it gives it actually something tangible, something that you can touch, something the players can do every day. Because like Les Brown, my favorite motivational speaker of all time, who I already quoted before, but he used to say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that's true as us for a coach. We think the answer is going to be in all this new blitz and this new technique. And I think there is some of that. I think that's one very small piece of the puzzle. But really, like I said earlier, great defenses are made from ear to ear. Great position groups are made from ear to ear. And when you have this, the best coaches, the defensive coordinators that I saw, that I worked for, that were successful without resources, they understood that they had a vision and they had a sound, tangible philosophy that was rock solid, so that they stood for something. So even when we lost a game, because it's going to happen when you're a have-not of the conference, they weren't swayed by, we got to wholesale change this or that. Now, what I learned from my first year as a coordinator, I already told you guys, I take my first defensive coordinator job, and the pandemic happens 4 weeks later. And so what I learned from that experience was, we show up, I told you guys we had no experience. Well, when I took over at Assumption, they were the worst defense in the country in Division II. And in nine major categories of defense, in 6 categories, I made us worse. So I think the best thing I could have done was actually that. I think the worst case scenario is when you have a great year, your first year as a coordinator, and you think that everything you did was great. Well, I got a rude awakening that, hold on, if there's multiple factors that go into this, and I really need to figure out what my true philosophy is and how to build that. And so what I came across, because being a defense coordinator for the first time, is after that year I had to lick my wounds. I had to say, listen, I am one of the worst coordinators in the country. We were the 99th ranked defense in the country that year in total defense or scoring defense. I think it was scoring defense. And I said, well, listen, I'm the 99th worst coordinator. And until I admit that, until I am okay with that, not okay with that, but I accept that, I'm going to continue to be, or I'm going to be worse. Because, everything in this world, we're either growing or dying. It's natural law of life. So's grass, so's a relationship, so are the trees outside. They're either growing or they're dying. And I knew that I had to grow constantly. And I had to begin, like Stephen Covey says in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I had to begin with the end in mind. And the end is how, it's my job to build a winning defense in all scenarios, whether there's a pandemic, whether we have no starters with experience, whether we lose our starters to injury. You have to be able to finish the sentence. How can we win if? How can we win if? How can we win if this happens? How can we win if that happens? How can we win if this happens? And you can only do that by having a philosophy that, like I said, grounds you in success and keeps you afloat in failure. So the itinerary for this meeting, the first part is I want to talk about the purpose of defense. I think this is something that seems very elementary, but we talk about it almost every day. And since I read a really good book, we'll talk about here in a little bit, I've talked about it almost every day as a defensive coordinator because it's important to keep the main thing the main thing. The next thing we're going to talk about is the foundation, the cornerstones of our philosophy, right? And those come in three phases. First of all, the mentality of the defense and your philosophy, strategy, and tactics. So if you read The Art of War, Sun Tzu always talks about the two pieces of philosophy of strategy and tactics. Well, I just felt like there was another layer that is mentality, right? We have to develop the space between their ears first, and then we can talk about strategy, and then we can talk about tactics, or what we refer to as scheme or technique as coaches. The final thing is I wanted to try to show you guys how we implement this in our 5 basic first-level jobs or skills. And this is only for the D-line. We actually have this for every position. It may not be 5, but I had our staff do a very important exercise during the pandemic, and it was something that fundamentally changed how I see defense and how I see football after we did it. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So the first thing, the purpose of defense. We lose sight of this as coaches, and I know after my first year as a defensive coordinator, we did not have a good year. We were 99th, and I told the defense that if we could become 98th, then that would be a success because that means we improved. And we did not. The next season, we were like the number 5 defense in the country, which was excellent, and everybody was excited about. But then the following season, I was so used to having an entire season of 3 and outs. In a season where we only let, we had 17 or 20, maybe 20 red zone attempts on us the entire year, right? And we played 11 games, okay? So in one of those games, we had 4. So there were games where we didn't have any. But I lost sight of the purpose of defense. I was wanting to get 3 and outs, and I felt like if they drove the ball, that something was going wrong. Now, our players also don't truly understand their purpose. Like one thing I do at University of West Georgia, and now that I did here at Davidson, is I asked the players my first day, what's the purpose of defense? And I think it's a good exercise for all of us to do as coordinators. What's the purpose of offense? What's the purpose of defense? If you're just a position coach, what's the purpose of being a defensive back? What is it? What is the purpose of being a D lineman? And let's see what are we out here for? And this perspective helps us keep the main thing, because the first purpose of defense is to keep the offense from scoring. That's it. Keep the offense from scoring. If you do that, then you do your job. Now, there's a number of ways to do that. But the second purpose is to gain possession of the ball. Again, there are a number of ways to do this. It's not just takeaways, it's not just interceptions and fumbles. You can gain possession of the ball in a 4th down stop, again, which keeps the offense from scoring. You can gain possession of the football on a punt block, a field goal block, right, which also keep the offense from scoring. But you can tie all of that. If you do those things, you're keeping the offense from scoring. Again, it seems elementary, but when you talk about it with your players, is it really? Test them. Ask them, what is the purpose of defense? Give me 3 of them, and I guarantee you they won't come up with all 3 of these. Might come up with 1, maybe 2, maybe. But the third one is to score. Like, we have to help the team win. Like, there's a saying that I love to say, and my coaches said when I was growing up, they can't win if they can't score. Well, I've heard coaches all the time say, well, that's not true. Well, we had a shutout, but our offense threw a pick 6. The purpose of defense is to keep the offense from scoring, gain possession of the ball, and score. And you have to be good enough at gaining possession of the ball, including one piece of it, takeaways, that you can score. And so if you lose a game, like, it's not just, we just did our part because we didn't let them score. No, there are 3 purposes to defense. to a great defense, to an attacking defense. And it's our job to complete these three pieces of the purpose every single game. This is from a book, actually. This is a book called The Radar Defense for Winning Football. I bought it for like $100 some odd on a rare book website. I read it years ago, but by Jules Yakupovich. It was written in like the late 60s, early 70s. Absolutely fascinating book, and highly recommend it for any defensive coaches. I think he brings some timeless lessons like what is the purpose of defense.
Thanks for listening to The Give, presented by Lawrence First and Goal on the Coach and Coordinator Network. If today's conversation helped you think differently about building your defense, you can find Coach Woody Blevins' complete presentation along with hundreds of other on-demand Lawrence First and Goal clinic store. Every purchase supports the mission of Lawrence First and Goal to raise money for pediatric brain tumor research while giving coaches access to some of the best football education available anywhere. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of The Give. And if you found value in today's conversation, we'd appreciate it if you'd leave a review and share this episode with another coach. You can find the Lawrence First and Goal Clinic store at lfgclinic.com or click the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.